Thanks so much, Fergal, and welcome to everyone who's on the webcast today. It's an overwhelming response, and certainly, as Fergal mentioned, a follow-up to our earlier session about a few weeks back that actually formed the structure of this presentation. It was actually formed through the questions that were asked on the first session. So, really happy to be able to present this and work with you guys as the audience to find some solutions to some pretty common ailments in sales. The first thing we're going to sort of start talking through here is looking at how to empower your organization, more specifically empower your sales and marketing team. And the most effective way in our experience to empower your sales team is to maximize their most precious resource, and certainly to continue to keep looking at how to maximize their most precious resource, and that being time. Now, it may seem a little cliche to talk about time being a most precious resource, but we find a lot of sales reps spending a lot of time with people who aren't particularly well qualified from the outset, and the opportunity cost in pursuing those quasi opportunities is significant. Redirecting that time and energy into a focused area of opportunity, certainly the biggest area for a catalyst in your organization. What we're really looking to get to is talk more around the idea of the investment. And we believe that those who won't invest their most precious resource with you aren't likely to invest their money with you either. I'm sure you may have heard this saying before, but it certainly rings true within our organization and the clients that we work with. So how do you get there? How do you get prospects to invest their time with you? Is really where we're going to spend the first part of this webcast. Per the topic of this session, it's really looking to get to the truth. So we believe that by getting to the issue truth as quickly as possible with a prospect, you're more likely to be able to have them spend their time with you. So let's talk a little bit about how we do that. And most importantly, for many of you, given that time is your most precious resource, how do you get there quickly? Certainly the formation that we've all been classically trained around of achieving that issue truth quickly is through discovery and diagnosis of the issue. And Scott's going to talk a little bit about how our prospects buy and some of the questions you can ask. But before we get to that, I thought I'd just walk through a little bit about some research about how prospects buy. And this is research that we've conducted over hundreds of interviews with marketing executives and CEOs who buy products and services from organizations like you guys on this call today. The first exercise is I asked them to write down 5 questions for a fictitious product or service that they would need to know before evaluating whether to buy it or not. Then I get it down to 3. I asked them to eliminate 2 of those critical 5 first questions, then rank them. This is what comes out of that. It may be no surprise, but it's almost universal in the way that these questions are written and in the way that they're structured in terms of 1, 2, 3. So number 1, the first question that a CEO or executive who's looking to buy your service is going to ask themselves, what problem do you solve for me, or why do I need what you're selling? No big aha moment there, but the second one that comes out of that is quite often where people, especially salespeople, tend to let it roll off, which is, what is my likely outcome or result if I make the purchase? And that's fulfilling the dream. Thirdly, why would I buy from you? What's interesting here is each question leads to the next, and if they don't know why they need it, then they don't care about the outcome. And without the first 2, nobody cares about why they pick you. So that's a little bit of the harsh truth that many don't want to listen to or realize before even going into a prospecting endeavor. Therefore, to be able to get to that issue truth quickly, it's about asking great first questions, really listening to those answers from the prospect, asking deeper, open-ended questions from them, being honest in your responses, and we're going to dive into that a little bit more as well, and being able to put the pieces together to form your true opportunity. So what is a great question? I'm going to hand it over to Scott here, who's going to walk through the next segment of what do your questions need to uncover, and how do you ask great questions? Scott.
Hey, David. Thank you so much for the opening, and I'm constantly humbled by both you and Fergal's accents and your creativity. So hopefully I can carry the ball, but I don't want to sound as though I'm trying to be too brilliant. But most folks that have worked with me in the past know that the root of successful sales, and for today's topic as it relates to really getting to the truth, is asking great questions. They're typically not complex questions. In fact, they're pretty simple and direct, but they really have to be sincere. They have to be honest, and as I mentioned, pretty direct. So what I'm going to walk through at the outset is 3 truths that we should drive to get to, and some of the challenges of getting there, and then actually talk through some of the questions that help get to the truth, and maybe we'll have some fun talking about some of my successes and probably my failures, a heck of a lot more fun in using some real-world use cases on how me and my team in the past have gotten to the truth. So if you go to the next slide, I think we can get started. And I think the first truth you really need to approach if you want to be successful, if you want to establish a strategic, trusting relationship with any prospect, and in fact for any relationship, is to really try to get to what is the real issue. As a sales professional, you have to be able to diagnose what is the root cause, what is, in this case, the issue truth. And then as you start to go through that, and I'm not as creative as Fergal or David. This is when I tried to do my best Jack Nicholson. You can't handle the truth, but it really is what I think speaks to us as sales professionals, as prospects, and that is really approaching. And Fergal, I'm getting some background. So
They're actually gone to
somebody's line. Some background there?
Yeah, I can hear that. Dave,
okay, well,
are you on mute? Okay, thank you. That fixed it.
Thank you, Fergal. And it's not surprising that I tried to get creative with my Jack Nicholson impression, and the whole thing goes sideways. So I'll try to focus down here. But what I was trying to get to with this slide is that as a top-notch sales professional, and in the context of developing a trusting strategic relationship with your prospects, it is a mutual handling of the truth, per se, that makes the best relationships and gets to the most successful closes. And, if you think about it, most people, whether you're a sales professional or a prospect, the thing that drives people away from the truth is that, it's that simple word, fear. In many cases, sales professionals have happy ears. They hear what they want to hear, but I typically have seen it play out as individuals not wanting to hear what they don't want to hear. And a sales context is there's no opportunity here. But if you think about it, getting a no or finding out there's no opportunity is a heck of a lot better than living in the world of maybe. I think most sales professionals on the line, I'm certain Dave has seen it in his experience, I've certainly seen it in mine, is that there is a laser focus that successful sales professionals have in getting to a yes or a no as quickly as possible. It takes a lot of courage, but going back to the earlier slides that Dave walked through, it saves a heck of a lot of time. So I would simply tell everyone on the line that you never want to live in the world of maybe. Get to a yes or a no as quickly as possible, and hopefully some of the questions that follow will allow you to do so. One of the brilliant questions, why are we here? And again, it doesn't have to be too complex, but In fact, I was on some sales calls yesterday, and in asking questions that are sincere but simple, why are we meeting? What compelled you to invest your time? What would be your ideal outcome? And in some cases, asking the prospect to paint their dream or their ideal outcome really uncovers if there is an opportunity, and really uncovers the truth right at the outset. And if you put this into the real world, and I think I've got an example following this. I once was with a global travel website, and it's West Coast, and I know on the last call I quoted the brands. I'll try not to do that here, but it was a remarkable situation that I would put at the absolute ideal end of the spectrum, where I walked in and certainly there was an awful lot of pressure, a global brand, key brand within the industry, something that we really, really wanted to close. And I started it with the, as I mentioned, the brilliant question, why are we meeting? What compelled you to meet with me, and understand how we can work together? And the woman across the table, who is, I would sincerely say, one of the smartest minds I've worked with in the interactive marketing space, she said, well, I'm glad you asked that. And she literally turned around her monitor and proceeded to walk through a 27-page slide deck of what the strategic interactive marketing plan was, and how, in this pursuit, email fell into it. So I'd put that definitely at the ideal end of it. It ended up being a $1.5 million contract, which I think has grown exponentially now, but it started with a simple question: hey, why are we meeting, and what compelled you to meet with me? If you go to the further steps of the sales process, and I've found that constant checkpoints around that initial truth, opportunity and trust that's driven at the outset of the relationship. If you have diligence and rigor around truth checkpoints across the sales process, it's really going to keep you on track. And more importantly, it's going to keep that prospect connected with you on that journey, right? If you begin the initial pursuit and you concoct this mutual opportunity or this mutual dream, you want to have mutual checkpoints across the whole sales process, so that you can validate not only in your mind but with the prospect that the dream is still the same, that things haven't changed, there haven't been any new factors, and you certainly, in an ideal situation, establish milestones so that both of you can understand that you're advancing and following, the milestones for the opportunity and for the dream. And if you go to the next slide, I think this was a pretty dramatic example. Actually, earlier this year with Docurated, I was working with one of our sales professionals, and it's a very large leading media brand. And we were totally pumped the tail end of Q2 to get this closed, verbal confirmation, paperwork being executed, and the sales representative did a great job saying, hey, what's changed since the last time we've talked? Can we get this contract executed? Are we on track? And we were pretty shocked to find out that within 24 hours they were going to announce that they were acquired. And you can imagine that was somewhat deflating, but I give this sales professional an awful lot of credit, because he immediately reconfirmed the commitment that they had to our relationship and the challenges we were solving, and agreed that we were still going to get it closed. And it did close 90 days later. But I think it highlights that you have to be diligent in checkpointing each and every time you meet with your prospect and the prospect's teams, to make sure that you're on track, make sure that those truths are aligned, and that this opportunity is moving in the right direction. And if we go to the third set of questions, and those were, you've started out with a great opportunity, you've uncovered a truth, you've got this mutual dream, you've checkpointed, we're going to consummate and close the deal. And one of the things that we really have to double down on as successful sales representatives is to clearly define the path to signature. You know, you confirm the truth at the outset, you've validated it throughout, and if you've done that, you've sincerely and strategically earned the right to close the deal. And oftentimes, I found that sales professionals don't get succinct and aggressive in asking, hey, who does what by when, in order to get a signed document in my hand to consummate the deal. And I think this final example could highlight that. You know, we were pursuing a very national, and I would highlight national, newspaper. And we were, once again, checkpointing throughout the whole process. We had a great opportunity. We were excited about the opportunity and came down to the closing and realized that the organization had never signed an on-demand software contract. You know, the individual I was working with had 10 years tenure in the organization. We felt as though everything was lined up to get closed, and in asking about, hey, what is the path to signature, this individual who's had 10 years tenure looked at me and said, I don't know, which you can imagine was a little bit upsetting. But after we sat back and thought about it, and he shared with me, because there was a lot of trust involved, the reason why he didn't know is because on-demand software was so new to this organization. And we quickly collaborated and found, hey, is there an example, is there a proxy that could help us find that path to signature? And thank goodness there's this company called Salesforce.com that had signed a contract about 6 to 9 months earlier, and we simply used that path to get the contract closed. So hopefully these examples help you. Once again, simple and succinct questions have served me and my sales teams along the way to get to the truth, to develop trust, and to get more closes. So with that said, I'll pass it back to you, Dave.
Thanks, Scott. I think you brought up a really good point there, woven into those examples, which is the getting to the truth requires a great deal of trust to be formed as quickly as possible. And in my experience, great salespeople, great sales professionals are able to establish trust quickly. You know, for many, it takes years to earn, and the old saying of seconds to break. But getting to that initial level of trust from the get-go is sort of the secondary point of being able to get to the truth. So I'm going to spend a couple of minutes on talking about gaining trust. In building trust, there's certainly a number of formulas out there. One that was being tried and true with us over the years has been that we believe that trust comes from meeting or beating customer expectations through reliability and delight. So it can also be equated to relationship equity. And I believe that the single greatest reason someone buys from you is whether they trust, not just in you as a person, but that you can deliver what they need or want, especially in this business, which comes down to reliability. And a lot of times case examples and testimonials are really just that initial foundation of, okay, someone else is vouching for you, and I'm more likely to believe what someone else is saying about you than what you say about yourself. And then being able to demonstrate your true, sincere interest, to your point earlier, Scott, around helping that prospect accomplish their objectives, always above your own. And I think that we've all been on those calls with people trying to sell to us where you can certainly feel that isn't their objective, that they're looking for a close from you no matter what, whether it's a good fit or not. It happens so often out there that when you do speak to a salesperson or you do hear a sales pitch from one of your team where they truly put their prospects' interests above their own, it comes across as a form of delight to the customer because it is still relatively rare out there. It is a key point of differentiation for many. So when both parties believe and trust in the relationship, that I and I know Scott also believe that this truth can set you both free to have a much more open dialogue, which typically leads to faster close cycles or paths to signature, and in many cases, larger deal sizes as well, because you've been more open and honest with one another from the start. Here's a novel idea. if you're seeking the truth from a prospect, the best policy is to reciprocate. I train and work with our sales organization and those of our clients to operate with honesty and integrity. And it's not just because you're likely to get caught if you don't. It just has proven over the years to drive bigger deals and have those deals close faster. And I put a point here, in a social, digitally savvy world, your last word or promise to a prospect might be just that, certainly if you're not taking the high road from day one. So to elaborate on that a little bit, I thought I would go into the flip side of that equation. When getting to the truth, why does a prospect appear to be two-faced? And we got a number of questions in our last session around this, but not as succinct as talking about the true lies that we get as salespeople from prospects, and perhaps even those that our sales reps are peddling. So I'm going to focus this on how to respond to a couple of my favorites, and then we'll hear from, I'd like to ask the audience to think about yours as we're going through this. So many statements provided by prospects can certainly derail even the most savvy BD executives. Even though they're often said with good intentions, typically, or usually, they're just blatant lies. And here are some of my favorites. Number one, please send me some information. So one of your sales reps has gone through the phone gauntlet, and despite your best attempts to politely end the call, you finally get fed up as you're being sold to. And being nice, you say, please send me some information. In most cases, this is code for never bother me again, never call me, do not email me, leave me alone. So an answer here is when a prospect asks you to send information, try responding with something more specific. And I find that this works very, very well. So when people ask me for information, they either have something very specific in mind, or I didn't do a good job of explaining what we do, and they just want to get off the phone. Just be courageous enough to ask the question back to your prospect of which situation are we in now? And the key to this one is to be silent from there. It's amazing how much that question will uncover in terms of someone trying to get you off the phone immediately, that it gives them an out without having to tell you exactly why. Number two, your price is too high. We've all heard this one. We all spend probably significant portions of our training budget and time every year going through negotiation tactics. But why start negotiating unless one of these has been accomplished first? So here's the situation. Well, Dan, your demo was awesome, but it's just too expensive. I always look to focus on the value and the impact of the issue when solving an issue for them. So getting to the truth is really key. Without having the issue truth here, I can't defend where the value really is. So two things are either happening when someone tells us this. Either A, you sell an actual commodity with zero differentiation, and your price is higher than the competition while providing no additional value. That's a hard truth to swallow. Or, alternatively, and more likely, your price seems too high because you didn't help the client appreciate the value that they get in return for their investment with you. If the value is high enough, making sure that you've got a true understanding of the issue, truth, you can almost justify any price, provided they're confident that you can deliver the results. Number three, the old famous, I'm the decision maker. So when you ask a prospect who's the decision maker, the most common answer is I am. One of a couple of things is happening here. The person giving the answer either wants you to think they have the authority for ego purposes. I know we've all gone down that road many, many times. Or is trying to protect the real decision maker. Also quite common, or both. So here are two approaches that we've used over the years that have certainly gained some traction in defining who the real decision maker is. Two approaches. One, the last time you made a decision like this, who got involved? And I think, Scott, your example of working through the national newspaper or the national publisher and the example of the path to purchase using the same path that another SaaS platform like Salesforce had followed in the past was great. On number two, I was working with another client recently, and 3 other people had to get involved to make it happen. How similar is this to your situation? So it's almost leading the conversation with an example, not having the client or the prospect, I should say, open their kimono on exactly who needs to be involved in the decision-making process. You're giving them a story to follow, leading the dialogue. Number 4, we're different, so this won't work for us. Well, this is probably the most common one I hear from our clients, and it usually sounds like we're a publisher, marketing consultant, ad tech company or firm, so this approach won't work for us because we're a totally different type of organization. The opposite side of this lie is we're just like everyone else, so this won't work. Now, this one's a little bit of a hard truth as well. I hate to break it to you, but the decision-making process for how companies buy professional services or technology is pretty consistent. Like I said right at the beginning of this session, the key to success is to uncover the unique capabilities that help you guys stand out from the competition. And it's always about the problems you solve as a key to unlock that point of differentiation, not the products and widgets that you sell. So remember when at the beginning I sort of talked about what is the problem that this solves, this widget, this service solves for our organization? Why is it important to solve it now? And why should I pick you over the competition? Getting to the issue truth right at the outset will help you identify why you're different and why it will work for them in the beginning. So I wanted to hand this over to you, Fergal. I'd love to work with Scott here, and hearing from the audience with such a large audience today, I'd be surprised if we didn't get a few of these that we could talk through for the next few minutes on what your favorite business development lie is, and most importantly to the audience, how you've overcome them.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Scott. Thanks to our audience too. We have had a few questions that have come in. I would encourage you as well to use this time to get your questions down into the question window and send them in to me. But the first question that came in is, my champion / decision maker has moved on from a company that I had a late stage opportunity with. What guidance can you give me on resurrecting this deal?
Well, I can actually point to an example that I'm working through right now, unfortunately or fortunately. So we have a deal pending with a global advertising agency network where the decision maker, we're right down to the nitty-gritty of it. The decision maker is moving to a completely different industry. So speaking from experience in this case, they have very little invested time and energy to really want to help move that process through. Even though we have a strong relationship, their time and energy is focused on where they're going next, not the trail or the wake that they're leaving behind. So in this particular instance, and with many that have preceded it, what I've been able to do is make sure that there's always more than one person within that organization that I'm working with from the start. And if that's not the case, then getting to the next person as quickly as possible. Normally, if you're working in the senior level executive side of things, there are people around them who will understand the issue. And if you got to the issue truth and you really understood it from the beginning, that issue typically hasn't gone away. It may be, I think that the key thing here is to figure out where that issue sits on the priority list of their replacement. And you can't get you can spend a lot of time trying to sell it to the replacement, but if it's not in their top priority list to begin with, you're going to be spending a lot of time and energy in a place where you're not going to get a deal closed. So from my perspective, with this deal that I'm working on right now, it's all about first making sure that I truly understand and can handle the truth of where this opportunity, where this problem, where this issue sits in the mind of the replacement decision maker.
And Fergal, Dave, the only thing I'd add is, we've certainly had that happen with our team here and in teams in the past, and I think it's key from the outset to try and build, a constituency above and below whoever you're working with. Ideally, it's at the top of the organization. To Dave's point, I think it's spot on. It has to be a priority of the organization. But if you're able to get multiple touch points with that priority focused on the truth and the true objective of the organization. If someone moves on, if it's still a priority and you have contingent collaborative relationships across that constituency, it should help you drive the deal to closure.
Yeah, the sad part of it is that you've got to be able to accept that the deal may be dead.
Yeah.
Don't be the one keeping it on life support, which is a hard truth, but it's one that will save you in the long run, focusing time and energy into other areas.
Yeah, Dave. The question would be, with XYZ gone, is this deal dead?
Yeah, and I think it's being honest with yourself about it.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Another question from the audience is, I constantly get prospects saying, we don't have a need for your service, or we just don't have the budget. What guidance do you have for reps on the call today on how you can turn that around?
Scott, do you want to pick this one up first?
Sure. I think the first part of that, Fergal, we don't have a need for your project or your product. I think the root cause there is, going back to the original questions we were talking about, is really understanding, what are the priorities of the organization, what are the challenges that this individual or a team of people are trying to solve, and then, sincerely and strategically asking, if they've ever tried to solve it in the past, and that usually provides the bridge to talking about your product, solving their solution. So I think if you're in a sales process and someone says, hey, we don't think there's a need, and you've invested time there, you probably didn't do a good amount of work up front. And then contingently, as it relates to the budget, if you do uncover that opportunity and you are collaboratively working with your prospect and there is a need, I think back to Dave's earlier point, always driving value on how your product helps solve that process, and ideally tying it to material ROI is something that has helped me and served my sales teams in the past in overcoming any budget questions.
In a very similar tone, I would say that if you're being told that they don't have a need for the products or services that you have, either one, you haven't done a particularly good job up front, like Scott noted, in understanding what the true issue is likely to be, or they may have the problem and they don't yet know it. So one of those two situations is happening. All companies have problems they need to solve. It may not be something that you're able to solve for them, but getting to that point quickly, I mean, that sort of, you can live in that world of limbo of maybe that Scott talked about if you're not willing to accept that maybe they don't prioritize that problem right now, or they don't know that they have it, and therefore, and maybe also not looking to recognize that they do. On the other side, on the budget side of things, again, further to your point, Scott, in terms of there's two things that I look at when I'm told that there's no budget. One, that I haven't done a particularly good job in looking at the cost, the opportunity cost, and being able to monetize the side of the equation of, if you don't solve this problem, what's the revenue or cost implication that this is going to have on your organization? If I understand what the financial impact of not making a move is, it's pretty rare that even if it's not a budgeted line item, they're going to find budget for it. So there's always room for additional things to be purchased within an organization, solutions to be purchased, if it solves a problem that's big enough and warrants the investment.
I totally agree, Dave. I actually was on a call yesterday with a major publisher, and their 2015 budget is already set up. Certainly, a product like ours is kind of in an emerging area, so there's not a line item in their budget for us, but they were pretty compelled with the ROI that we could drive, and the decision makers said, well, you know how it is with budget, Scott. If you can find material ROI and cost savings, we'll find a way to fund it. So I think that really validated what you just said.
Yeah, it's simply put, if you don't solve this, it will cost you X. Would you invest Y to get it solved?
Mm-hmm.
Fergal, what
Thanks,
else you
guys.
got?
A couple more questions for our audience as well. You've got a couple more minutes to send in your last few. Just a reminder to everyone that this is being recorded too, and you'll all get links to the recording and the slides. But our next question is from, I believe it's a sales manager that's on the line. And this person has reps in their group that are scared to ask hard questions. Scott and Dave, as a sales leader, what coaching can you give to your sales reps that are scared to ask those hard questions?
Oh, I'd love to pick this one up. The first reciprocal question is, what are they scared of? More directly, who are they scared of? This is the fear factor is always boils down to the sales environment in which your reps are working. There's certainly some training opportunity there, but it's the culture of sales that the nurturing environment and positive recognition of the process of accomplishing an outcome rather than just the outcome itself. It's just human nature to focus on the bad, but I find that the organizations where fear is the lowest is where positive recognition of activity towards goal rather than just goal itself starts to break down the barriers over time of fear of asking those direct questions. If the consequences of being told no are equally as rewarded as the consequences of someone saying yes, it's usually a pretty good step. So Scott, you mentioned, the power of no is almost as good as a yes, because you're not spending time with prospects that aren't going to buy. You're not living in that world of maybe. Now, obviously, there's a lot of factors that you can put into this. You don't want a whole bunch of no's. You still have to hit your sales goals. But it's the ability to say no and the empowerment of your sales reps and driven through the environment in which they work that conquers that fear pretty quickly.
Yeah, and as a sales manager, Fergal, I'd encourage the sales manager to operationalize it with some of the newer reps that are afraid to ask those questions by demonstrating how to ask those questions in the context of a phone call or in a sales meeting. It's remarkable in my experience that the fear seems to dissipate in asking the hard questions when there's a successful outcome, whether it be, hey, there is an opportunity here for your product, or no, there isn't an opportunity. You can invest time on the better opportunity. So that reinforcement in practice is something that, in my experience, has helped overcome the fear.
Yeah, I think that role player piece is really key.
Yep.
Practicing on yourselves rather than practicing on your prospects.
Absolutely. Any other questions there, Fergal?
Really good question. And we are down to our last question. This as well, it's going back to something earlier in the presentation when we talked about who is the decision maker. But the question is, marketing are giving me leads that are mid to junior level, but I know that I need to get higher in the organization. So what can I do if marketing is giving me a mid-level lead that I know doesn't have buying power? How can I move up higher in that company without upsetting anyone?
Well, Fergal, I'm inclined to ask you to answer that question because there's been some successful efforts that you and the SDR team here has led as it relates to our upreach efforts. So I would, that's how I would answer that question, but I'd feel more comfortable if you share that with the group.
Yeah, I can talk for a minute about some of the things that we do. So I run marketing at Docurated, and about 90% of our marketing investment is online. And we get a lot of leads every day, or a lot of names every day from people that interact with our content online. And I think, like a lot of companies as well out there, a lot of the people that fill in forms and are consuming content are mid-level people, and they might not be the final decision maker. And so what we do here is we have a sales development rep who is responsible for the online channel, and straight away he will reach out to the person that has interacted with our website and do qualification there, try to figure out what was the curiosity of the person coming to our site in the first place. And his ask is always to try to get, for a next conversation, try to get the decision maker involved. And sometimes they will get the decision maker, but more often than not, he gets stonewalled, or something happens where that's not set up by the person that initially interacted with our site. So what we do then is we wait for a period of time and we start to build intelligence on, well, who from this company has been on our site, what are they looking at, and also we try and use third-party intelligence to figure out, well, like stuff that the list offer, well, what projects are they working on? And then we take that and we will call into the highest level in sales and marketing at that company. And we let them know about what people are interacting with on our site. And we offer to that person to have a phone call with our head of sales or our head of marketing to introduce our company, and would just love to learn more about your initiatives and why your staff have been coming to our site.
Fergal, one of the, I think that from a marketing perspective, we've experienced the same types of qualification criteria. When the reps actually get someone on the phone, a couple of key things that we've learned over the years, just in phrasing questions to get to that higher level decision maker that I'd enjoy to share with the audience. One of them is a question of, it's almost playing on the fear side of things. So, thank you so much for your interest. I would love to make sure that we're providing the right solution. I wouldn't want to miss one of the key issues within your organization, or whatever the problem may initially seem to be, and make us both look bad when we do provide that solution. So, what's the best way that you would recommend and be comfortable with bringing other people who can also clearly define and make sure we're on the right path into this conversation? So how do we help create a solution? How can you help me provide a solution that doesn't that meets all of your needs, and we don't both look bad by leaving something out of the equation? A lot of the times we find that we've got mid-tier managers and coordinators being tasked with research and evaluation of products and services that we provide, and that of our clients as well. You know, many times they won't necessarily understand the issue behind the request, so it's certainly a key part of the equation of moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Dave, and I think about that question coupled with some of the upreach efforts that Fergal arms actually me with and our CEO Alex with to reach higher into the organization. We found all three of those approaches to really be successful, and to your point, incorporating more people and tasking some of our senior executives to reach at a higher level into their organization as well.
That's it for the questions. For our audience, you will get a link from me later today with the recording of this. And Dave and Scott, do you guys want to wrap it up?
Sure, thanks, Fergal. I thought I'd just create a quick PowerPoint mind map slide to sort of talk through back where we've been as a summary. Certainly, the topic here is to let the truth set you free, and getting to the truth quickly to be able to close bigger deals more often. So we talked a little bit about the investment of time being your most precious resource, and to cut people loose when they're wasting your time. To be able to get there, you need to be a seeker of truth and go through the process of discovery and diagnosis by asking great first questions, being sincere, honest, and direct with the line of questioning, having the courage to get there, also having the courage to be able to handle the truth of being told no, and also helping your prospect understand the value of getting to the truth quickly. So you don't live in that world of maybe, that you're in a very clear black and white world of yes or no. And I think to one of the points of the questions from the audience, the sales manager, around the fear of a no, is just making sure that the environment's set up to adequately help those guys be trained and be confident in that arena. You're also building trust with your sales organization just as equally as you are with your prospects. As you're going through that path to purchase, path to signature, making sure that you've got those waypoints or those checkpoints in place, and that you're constantly checking in to make sure that the dream hasn't changed over time, ultimately to get the deal done. And Scott, you had some great examples and stories of where those situations have become derailed a couple of times. We also went through some of the two-faced liars and answers to get around them. So you'll have opportunities to go back and provide a little bit more context around those with your sales team as you may look to present this content in a summarized format back to your organization. So one of the things that I also just thought I'd wrap here with is that, obviously we're in the business that you guys are. We're just a different segment of it in most cases. So there's certainly, we do provide tools to help you. The list and our product set, Daily Vista, provide actionable insight, giving you and your sales organization the right reason, the right time, and the right person to reach out, certainly prioritizing your time there. And Scott?
Yeah, and our solution certainly helps uncover and create presentation content that closes within the context of a presentation. So be happy to help anyone that would like to reach out.